Monani, it's so good to have you back on the social show. I have to commend you for tuning in today because it must mean you're serious about making our country, our world, a better place for all. And I definitely hope that by the end of the show, you can perhaps look at corporate social investment, shared value, responsibility with a little bit more depth and clarity as to what legacy you would like to leave behind. Of course, my name is Virtualon and you are tuned into the social show where you can just air out your ideas and concepts and your initiatives around being a little bit more socially conscious. If you want to get in touch with us, you can definitely do so at Brand Live Radio on social media on all platforms. You can just send a tweet or a Facebook message. I'm always open and ready to hear what you have to say. Also, if you feel as though you have an initiative that you want us to talk about and you want to get involved with social TV in any capacity, you can do so at press at social-tv.co.za. And as per usual, I'm just going to start the day with the news. Launched at the recent Sustainability Week in Pretoria, the United Nations Environment and the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research have released a report outlining the state of waste management in South Africa. Recycling only 4% of the waste it generates. Africa has become a dumping ground for waste, particularly hazardous waste, often from developed countries, and a far cry from African Union's vision that African cities will be recycled at least 50% of the waste they will generate by 2023. Professor Linda Godfrey, principal scientist at CSIR, was coordinating lead author of the publication, which looked at recycling in Africa. Professor Godfrey highlighted the need for Africa to start addressing the current poor waste management, saying that it is having a negative impact on the economy and society as well as the environment. President Cyril Ramaphosa has described his G7 visit as a success and stressed that the importance of strong political signal delivered by summit's focus on developing and implementing innovative strategies to leapfrog the global effort to address issues facing the world's oceans. South Africa's participation in the 2-day session was held under the theme Healthy, Productive and Resilient Oceans and Seas, Coasts and Communities, was at the invitation of the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The President said it was of paramount importance to strengthen the multilateral approach to managing ocean resources beyond national jurisdiction. He welcomed the opportunity presented for countries to share their experiences, with South Africa reflecting on its own milestones, successes, challenges in relation to management of oceans as the resource to drive economic growth. And lastly, in our news, Peace Parks Foundations has agreed to develop ecotourism in Mozambique in a bid to support the management and transformative tourism development of Maputo Special Reserve and the Ponta do Oro Marshall Marine Reserve. The Peace Parks Foundation, as a frontier conservation NGO, has signed a partnership an agreement with the Mozambique to merge these two bodies into one management structure. The agreement is based on a strategic plan developed by both partners. Initial funding of about 16 million donated by the Rennet Foundation, the Ways Foundation, and other private donors. The World Bank funded Mosbio program is also investing into the development of these reserves. In terms of the partnerships, Peace Parks will provide technical and financial support for conservation and ecotourism development activities, which will entail merging MSR and PPMR into one management structure. The adjacent reserves are contiguous with South Africa's Tembe Elephant Park and the World Heritage Site, Ismangaliso Wetland Park, and are all parts of the Lumbobo Transfrontier Conservation Area. And that concludes our news for the day.
My name is Sanne. I'm a chemical engineer and I work as a process specialist at Presolid. As a manufacturing company, we are very concerned with ensuring responsible consumption and production. Therefore, we continuously invest in new technology that reduces our environmental impact and increases the energy efficiency of our production. Part of my job is to experiment with and measure the flow of the raw material. It helps us match the material and the product to minimize waste in the production.
My name is Andrew Lowndes. I'm the UK and Ireland Sales Manager for Preslit Care. Presslett Care, we're very passionate about providing access for people with physical disabilities, and we're very passionate about the Changing Places campaign that provide larger accessible toilet and changing facilities. It's fantastic when we can see the smile on the faces of users. That's our reward, is to see the satisfaction and the enjoyment that people have.
You're back on the social show with myself, Vua Chiron, and please don't forget that if you want to ask a little bit about the stories that we spoke about, or you want to just get into the topic at hand, please go to Brand Live Radio on all social media platforms, whether it's Twitter or social or Facebook. I was going to say social Facebook, and just ask the questions, ask away. Please send me your comments, send me your ideas on today's topic. And today we're talking about something that I think is quite important. I don't know if you know, recently Vodacom had one of the biggest BEE ownership deals, which they sort of invested 17.5 billion, which is the largest ever in the ICT sector. Vodacom Group, its existing BEE partners and newly formed staff scheme, on Monday announced a broad-based BEE transaction of up to 17.5 billion that will see BEE partners exchange their current shareholding in Vodacom SA for a shareholding of about 5.8% to and 6.25% in Vodacom Group as an enlarged by the transaction. Now, the mobile operator said the deal represents the largest ever BEE transaction in the ICT sector that includes all existing BEE partners and a new staff scheme. Vodacom Group has agreed to terms with the Royal Bafokeng Holdings, Thebe Investment, Yebo Yethu, and a newly formed staff scheme with these combined interests will be consolidated into a new Yebo Yethu BEE structure that will own shares in the Vodacom Group. The transaction is subject to regulatory and shareholder approvals, and it will replace and build on the 7.5 billion Vodacom SA BEE ownership scheme that was concluded in 2008 and anticipated to unwind on the 8th of October 2018, 10 years after its implementation. The existing transaction, comprising of 6.25% rather, of shareholding in Vodacom SA held by Yebo Yethu, RBH and Thebe, has delivered meaningful value to its partnerships, benefiting over 100,000 Yebo Yethu investors and 8.5 current and past Vodacom SA employees. Now, this is, as I said before, the biggest BEE deal in ICT at the moment. And when I read about the story, it's still a little bit confusing to me as to exactly what's going on, and whether or not it's going to be as transparent as it seems, as it looks. However, my question for today is BEE working? Is it working for you? Is it working for the people that are your colleagues? Is it something that you implement in your CSI strategy? Is it a CSI strategy? Is BEE something that people have now sort of overlooked as something that is like paying your tax, like it's that chilled, it's that normal? Is that where we are? Is that what we're talking about? Is BEE working for you? Is BEE working for our country? And I'd be very, very interested in what you have to say about that, because I have a few personal remarks about BEE that I think it has both elements where you see the country really thriving and young black people really thriving from black economic empowerment, and now it's sort of radical black economic empowerment. But at the same time, I'm also seeing I'm seeing more and more black people being impoverished through the scheme, because I see that it's sort of the same black people. It's usually the same corporates looking at the same. So it's like it's just selected few who are really getting the return of investment, I suppose, in this BEE whole BEE idea. So what is BEE? A lot of people don't necessarily even know what it is anymore, and I'm one of those people. I think I have sort of overlooked and not really understood what was the point of BEE. I understand it in its essence. However, I definitely think it needs to be redressed and re-understood and sort of implemented in our corporates, So BEE is a radically selective program launched by the South African government to redress the inequalities of apartheid by giving black black meaning black, coloured and Indian South African citizens economic privileges, which they previously did not have under white rule. It's a form of affirmative action. Although race is the overriding factor, it includes measures such as employment preference, skills development, ownership management, socioeconomic development, and preferential procurement. Now, after the transition from apartheid in 1994, I know you all know this, some people don't, it was decided by the African National Congress government that the direct intervention in there needs to be a direct intervention in the redistribution of assets and opportunities to sort of level out the economic sort of disparities created by the apartheid legacy and apartheid policies, which favored white business owners. Now, BEE intended to transform the economy to be representative of the demographics, specifically race demographics in the country. And BEE was defined in 2001 by the Commission report. And this is the definition that they gave, right? It is an integrated and coherent socio-economic process. It is located within the context of the country's national transformation program, namely the RDP. It is aimed at redressing the imbalances of the past by seeking to substantially and equitably transfer the ownership, the management, and the control of South Africa's financial and economic resources to the majority of its citizens. It also seeks to ensure broader and meaningful participation in the economy by black people to achieve sustainable development and prosperities. Successful implementers of BEE also see it as a means to create economic growth in South Africa and as a vital advance in their corporate strategy. I definitely do think that the word BEE and the idea of BEE has sort of moved from this definition, which is to be sort of a socio-economic process, straight into sort of a strategy. A lot of corporates have taken it into their working space as a strategy to not only attract good business from the government and other government officials, because if you have a really good BEE scorecard, you're more likely to get more tenders, you're more likely to get more funding, you're more likely to get more support. It's sort of a strategy, and because it's been looked at as a strategy, I think it's been it's been misused. You find that a lot of the time black people become the faces or the facades of specific ownership roles. They're not necessarily owners, and a lot of the time you just see them on the forefront. However, you don't necessarily see them doing the groundwork. And I think a lot of the time we see that in you find CEOs and a lot of thought leaders being black, and they look empowered, they seem empowered, but in the background a lot of the stories that come out is that they're just there to sort of get the thumbs up from the government and from other people that they work with. So I wonder, what do you think the BEE program how has it failed for you? How has it worked? And how do you think this Vodacom deal is going to help revive perhaps people's belief and their belief in the BEE system, in their government trying to really economically, radically include people of color, so black people, into really, really important positions. Now, because it was implemented in 2003, it has been criticized for benefiting, like I just said, a narrow stratum of previously disadvantaged groups. And this, led to the introduction of the modified program, which was called the Broad-Based Black Economic Environment, or BBBEE. And it basically tried to not narrow the stratum, because obviously a lot of like I said, I do see the same faces doing the same things, and then it being called BEE. However, there's more black people in South Africa than there are white people, and there are more black people who need help than just the people that we see and the people that we always sort of interact with. So the new codes of good practice of broad-based black economic empowerment, I feel like I'm doing some sort of nursery rhyme, were gazetted by the South African government, and these concludes, obviously, like I said, ownership, management, control, employment, equity, skills development, but also what they looked at, I think, which is quite interesting, is construction sector and their scorecards, the tourism sector and their scorecards, and financial sector. Who are the leaders in those spaces, and how can we make sure that black people get involved? I'm still trying to figure it all out, to be honest with you. I definitely think the implementation of BEE has caused the emergence of classes, people being classed as black people, this resulting from, not only just looking at who gets the money and who gets the funding, but there's also a lot of fraud around it, a lot of corruption, a lot of fronting, a lot of difficulties in registering status, and political interference, as well as we've seen in the cases of Jacob Zuma, as well as Malema, where you see that BEE is something that can be used, for bad. And there's been a lot of poor accountability strategies that I've been seeing as well. So it's very important that we always interrogate the implementation of the BBBEE in the local government context to assess whether historical imbalances have been addressed or not. It's very important that the government needs to know that they always need to revisit BEE as economic empowerment policy to see whether it has benefited black majority or not. It's very important that BEE as a black economic emancipation blueprint gets proper implementation in alignment with other economic policies such as the National Development Plan, which we always speak about on the show. Also a segue to the Vision 2030 Summit that's coming up on the 20th and the 21st of June, which is going to be talking a little bit about the National Development Plan and 2030 and how that's going to work. But also just to accelerate economic opportunities for the black majority, I think it's very important that we keep speaking about it and we keep sort of interrogating companies that do want to get into that space and really want to make a change, like Vodacom in this particular space. What do you think about the 17.5 billion deal in the ICT sector, where you're seeing sort of, for me, it's well known, organizations that are getting involved and getting these shares. However, what kind of implementation strategies or impact strategies rather have been put in place to make sure that deals such as these ones, deals that speak about really including black people into the economy, are assessed and are fixed if they're not working, and are repeated if they are. I think it's very important that we monitor and evaluate all BEE ideas and idea systems and ideals, procurement systems, and all we need to really be a little bit more aggressive in the safeguarding around the manipulation and the corrupt tendencies arising from awarding tenders in the local government. It's just not only about tenders, right? It's also just about young black professionals who are struggling to find work right now, who may just get into a job because they fill in a BEE mandate for that corporate. They fill in they do well for your scorecard, but they're really being overused. They're being underpaid, and they're being because of the desperation of jobs, you find that the BEE space becomes a good segue to get them in, but to also misuse them and not put them in their rightful places. I definitely think the BEE space has had a lot of challenges and a lot of prospects that have been good, but I think it's very important that we rigorously look at this Vodacom deal, and we look at how the ICT sector, not only is it the future of, I think, job creation in South Africa, but also is it a space where we'll find that if you are in the ICT sector and you do get these shares and you do get to own anything in Vodacom and you work there, how will it benefit the youth? How will it benefit black youth from being economically emancipated? How will it allow them to be more, to have some sort of ownership around these big businesses? And is that the end goal? What is the end goal for Vodacom? And I think it's very important that we do speak about that. And if you have read about this BEE transaction between Royal Bafokeng Holdings, Tebe Investment, which Yebo Yetu, which has been existing for years, and obviously this newly formed staff scheme where they're all trying to really structure the shares in Vodacom Group. I wonder how that's going to look. I wonder how it's going to look for, I think, black young people who have not yet been included in that conversation. Is it going to be just sort of enriching the rich, or is it really trying to put back, people who maybe we have forgotten about, like the Yebo Yetu investors? I mean, they've been around for a while. Is it a are we regurgitating the same thing, or are we really doing something different? The new BEE transaction is also going to be funded through a combination of third party and vendor financing, reinvested equity of about 4.5 billion from the existing BEE partners, and facilitation from the Vodacom Group. And the new transaction has a 10-year funding term, extending the relationship between Vodacom and the Yebo Yetu as the BEE partner for at least the next 10 years. So then that comes with a lot of responsibility. The first is Vodacom and how it's going to monitor and evaluate how Yebo Yetu as its BEE partner for the next 10 years is going to grow and make sure more black people and more people, young people, are included in this, great possibility, this great new injection of wealth. At the same time, it's very important that we are sensitive to the fact that this kind of investment can constitute for a lot of corruption, can constitute for a lot of poor accountability from either or Vodacom or Yebo Yetu. What kind of implementation strategy will they have? 10 years is a long time, and if they don't get it right, I don't know how anybody else will. So it's very important that we know what to really look for and to really redefine what BEE means to us and to the country in 2018. I'm really eager to find out what you think. If you like to let me know about what you think about the BEE deal, what you think about BEE in general, what you think about what's going on in the country in terms of us trying to be more radically invest back into the black community. Well, how do you think we're faring? We'll just take a short break, and after that we'll be back with things to remember.
When I was 5 years old, I was an annoying kid, playing all the time and asking my mom to buy me that toy or that toy. And I always wondered why my dad can do the same. Why he needs to spend his time doing boring things like waking up in the morning very early or coming back late at night. But time has changed. From 2007 to 2012, the number of unemployed people has increased from 170 million to 202 million. And 75 million young people just like me are currently unemployed. So I guess that my father, he had an easier time finding a job. But we can change that.
What kind of things does a child deserve to have in his or her tiny hands? Probably a candy or a toy, or even better, a book and a pen. But what if this pen gets replaced by a gun? Imagine the horror of violence and abuse children are facing every day and the kind of future we are building for them. In fact, 300,000 children are still working as militants in conflicting areas all around the world. They did not have a choice, but you do.
It is time for one of my favorite parts of the show, which is things to remember. What is it that about the show? If you leave with nothing else, what do I make sure that you remember? The last words that will ring into your mind, the last concepts that you might start a conversation around with your family, with your colleagues, with your CSI counterparts. And we've got Dr. Anthea Jeffrey, who's going to be speaking to us a little bit in a few moments.
The empowerment challenge is probably the most difficult challenge that South Africa faces. Last year, the IRR commissioned an opinion poll to find out how much BEE is actually helping the poor to get ahead. And we found very disturbingly that BEE in its different aspects helps 14% of black South Africans, and it bypasses the remaining 86% who get no benefit from it at all. And worse still, BEE harms the entire country because it reduces investment, it diminishes growth, and it makes it much harder to solve the unemployment crisis. And we also have so many people who, though they need good education, need good housing, need good healthcare, are not being well served by the state. We put enormous money into these three spheres, but we get very little bang for the taxpayer's buck. So what can we do? We started to think that we must think outside the box, come up with creative solutions. And what we would like to propose is that we should have tax-funded vouchers, which would go to every household in the country, particularly those who are disadvantaged, that would give them access to their education, the schools of their choice, that would enable them to start meeting their own housing needs. If they're in an informal settlement, that they could go out and start upgrading their shack straight away, rather than waiting on the state to provide them with a house. In the healthcare sphere, they would be able to buy low-cost medical schemes, low-cost medical insurance, which the state should, of course, allow. And we could have a whole different approach to empowerment. Instead of having BEE with its focus on redistribution, we should think about what will generate growth and jobs, and give business EED points, or economic empowerment for the disadvantaged points, for things like investing in the country, expanding and maintaining jobs, buying from other businesses, paying tax, creating through their R&D new ways of solving problems. And we should also give business EED points for topping up the vouchers that go to the poorest, to help them afford good schools, good housing, good education. Or, alternatively, business could also earn EED points for thinking up new creative ways of solving our housing, education and healthcare problems. There are any number of innovative options being developed elsewhere. We can bring them to South Africa. We can improve and expand them. And if business got EED points for that, we could see a whole new dynamism in the economy and a real way of empowering the disadvantaged.
That was Dr. Anthea Jeffrey from the Institute of Race Relations, and she's the head of policy research, and she really spoke a little bit about what she thinks about how Black economic empowerment is going in South Africa. And if you have any comments on her statement, I'm really eager to find out what you have to say on Brand Live Radio, on social media, on Twitter as well as on our Facebook page, or you can just send me an email, press@social-tv.co.za, or you can just find out a little bit more about what we do at www.social-tv.co.za. That concludes my show for today. It's been amazing. Love and light, and goodbye.